Well, it was short and sweet. The US election count was expected to be a long, drawn, painful one, but that's not how it's turned out. It's a sea of red in the United States as Republicans take over the Senate and win the popular vote. Donald Trump is set to make history as the second president to get elected in 2 non-consecutive terms.
The final count may yet to be coming, but the Trump camp holds a solid majority with over 270 votes out of 538 at last count. Trump had Georgia and North Carolina of the 7 swing states as well. He's leading in all the other 5 battleground states.
In a victory speech a few hours ago, Trump reiterated that he would get down to improving the state of the US economy, seal the borders and stop wars, and of course, make America great again. Let's listen to what he said.
We want to have borders, we want to have security, we want to have things be good, safe, we want great education, we want a strong and powerful military, and ideally we don't have to use it. You know, we had no wars, 4 years we had no wars, except we defeated ISIS. We defeated ISIS in record time, but we had no wars. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war, I'm going to stop wars. But this is also a massive victory for democracy and for freedom. Together, we're going to unlock America's glorious destiny, and we're going to achieve the most incredible future for our people.
All right, to speak more on this, I'm joined now by Ramesh Damani, market veteran and our very own election watcher for the US elections. Ashok Sajjanhar, former ambassador, also joining us today on this special show. Welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for speaking with us. Mr. Damani, I have been so keen to speak to you on the outcome since our conversation on the 5th, before the votes were cast. And this was something that could have gone on for a week. But it's very, very clear that America has decided this time, a highly polarized society, maybe with a small margin of victory, but they're very clear because it's all gone to the Reds.
Absolutely, Tamanna. They're given a mandate, if you will, a very clear mandate. In fact, there's a trifecta going on in America. The White House, the lower house of the Congress, the Senate, and in fact, even the popular vote, which Trump has never got in his previous attempts, have gone in favor of Trump. So it's a very clear mandate from Trump. And in my opinion, it's one of the most historical comebacks I've ever witnessed in Western political society. Maybe you can compare it to 1960 when Richard Nixon, after losing the presidency, lost the governorship of California, and yet 6 years later was inaugurated as a president of America. Or Winston Churchill, 20 years in the wilderness, come back in World War II, led the Allies and became the greatest statesman of the 20th century. So those two probably compare with what Trump accomplished yesterday.
Mr. Damani, just, in terms of, because you watched this so closely, what happened to the 3 or 4 things that have switched for the Republicans? Is it now safe to say that a lot of traditional Democrat voters also went out and voted for Trump because the candidate they had was not something that really seized the imagination?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think Trump understands U.S. public much better than almost any politician, probably the most gifted politician of a few generations in Trump, if you will. I think there are 2 issues that he talked about which were very important to American voters. One, of course, is the economy and the inflation, that effect that people felt in the first 2 years of the Biden administration, thanks to the stimulus package. And then, of course, the immigration. He kind of demonized immigration a little bit, which I have some mixed feelings about because America is a country built on immigration. And I think he kind of demonized it to make his point. But that be as it may, I must first congratulate the American public and Trump for a historic election. It's a great spectacle to watch. But I think he hit the pulse of the nation. That's in democracy. We must respect what the people want. And the people very clearly want a better handling of the economy, for which they gave Trump high marks. And they want control over their borders, for which they again gave Trump high marks.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, thank you so much for speaking with us here at NDTV Profit. Absolute pleasure to have you on. And I'm just trying to understand from an India perspective. I mean, the story was that Trump or Kamala Harris, at the end of the day, doesn't matter. But is a Trump administration better for India?
Yes, thank you very much, Tamanna, for having me on your show. If you permit, I'll just add one more element, to your earlier question, to what Mr. Damani had mentioned. Of course, he was able to, Trump was able to sort of, feel the pulse of the people as far as economy is concerned, inflation, and also as far as immigration is concerned. But on the reverse, it was Kamala Harris was not really able to get its finger also on what is it that really troubled the people, what is it that really the people wanted. So, as far as her issues were concerned, the two major issues, one was abortion. Abortion, of course, is very important. It's hugely important to a large number of women. And the second was democracy. Democracy is something, very ephemeral in that sense, very nebulous sort of concept. So she was not really able to connect with the people. And on the first two things, as far as immigration, she was made the immigration czar by Biden, and she was not really able to deliver on that. And even as far as economy, she had some proposals, but then the counter question was, if you have all these proposals, why didn't you implement them when you were in power for 4 years? So I think there were a number of these issues there. But as far as India-US relations are concerned, as you said very correctly, by and large, we have seen that there is a bipartisan consensus in the United States, as also it exists in India, that we need to have strong relations between the two countries. And what I see is that the geopolitical situation being what it is, it is very different from the time 20 or 2021 when Trump was last in power. I think the situation has evolved in such a way. We have had two wars that are there. He was there when we had the COVID-19 pandemic also, and that, as far as the economy of the world and of America is concerned, is debilitated. And India has risen. India has been able to deal with those challenges in a very big way, in a very good way, whether it is COVID or it is the wars. Today, it is the fifth largest economy, while it was maybe the eighth or the ninth largest economy earlier. It is the fastest growing major economy. So I think the potential for the cooperation is between the two countries is much greater. So I foresee that not only in security, strategic, technology terms, but even as far as trade issues are concerned, which were a matter of some contestation last time, I think there also we should be able to find via media and take the partnership forward to mutual benefit and advantage. Tamanna.
Okay, actually, let me try and come in there, both of you. Thanks for joining in. And Mr. Damani, let's take that point forward, because PM Modi's tweet, or the post rather, on X speaks about this, right? That he addresses Donald Trump saying that as you build on the successes of your term, I look forward to renewing our collaboration to further strengthen the partnerships. Now, what would you expect could be the first of the cards to get unveiled between both the nations, which might be beneficial to India? Any thoughts here?
Neeraj, I'll come in first. I think the one thing that would be obvious would be the China plus one policy that has been going on for the last few years. I think now there are a whole bunch of companies, and a lot of them were up today, as I saw, who will benefit from this China plus one policy, as the US will seek to diversify its supply chain and seek to encourage India as a bulwark against China. So I think that would be the first to unveil. And of course, the Quad and its defense implications will probably continue. But respectfully, those two have also been started under Biden. So it's not exactly for Trump, but with Biden and Trump. India now occupies a pretty important position in global affairs and will continue to do so under Trump also.
Ambassador Sajjanar, what would you believe? Because there is this whole thing, right? I mean, China has, for example, set up shop in a big way in Mexico, and therefore Mexico has become such a large partner because a lot of it could be Chinese firms setting up base in Mexico and then exporting to the US. Could a lot of these things come under a bit of a stop? Because with Donald Trump, things can happen overnight and on a mass scale.
No, yes, you're right. And, he has forewarned of this, meaning, he has said that he's going to impose 60% tariffs on goods that are coming in from China. And he has said that if, there is a switch trade from via Mexico, which is coming to the United States, then he is going to impose tariffs of 200% on these goods that are coming, not directly, but through other territories. So definitely, I think he is going to keep a very close watch, a hawk's eye watch over all these developments. And if these things happen, it is definitely going to be to the benefit of India, notwithstanding the fact, Neeraj, what he has said that, India is a tariff king. Even earlier, he had made such remarks that, India has the highest tariffs in the world. But of course, we can work with him, and his actions against China can definitely be to our benefit and to our advantage, because it is, both China plus one. Also, if manufacturing stops in China, it is going to get more investments into India. And the other aspect is, this ISET, the initiative for critical and on critical and emerging technologies. I think that should continue, and that I am hopeful that Trump will also put his weight behind it so that we can take this forward, and also as far as collaboration in the area of defense technology. Neeraj.
Let's also remember what the first term of Donald Trump was like, and also remember that world markets are cheering a Trump return because of what Biden's 4 years were like, and the lack of clarity on what Kamala would do. She was a late entrant to the race. So he is in that sense a known devil. One of the things, and Mr. Damani, let me come to you on this, that we're going to have to get used to is policy by tweet or policy by X. A lot of a lot of announcements of what the US is planning to do, what their policies are, randomly at different times of the day and night and now, of course, Elon Musk's X coming from the president. What are the kind of, we're celebrating today, but what are the kind of things that we need to be careful of going forward from an Indian market's perspective?
Also, Ramesh, we now know that there is no way that Donald Trump will get banned from platform X the way it had happened in the past.
Oh, of course not.
Absolutely.
Of course not.
I think markets are, as when a new administration comes in, typically you have a honeymoon period. And I think we're experiencing the first of that honeymoon period. But, the way I felt this morning when I saw the results, I felt that the earth had moved on its axis. I think the world we've been living in for the last 70, 75 years, post-World War II, was the central role of the US as the largest economy in the world. On its back, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, even China exported and became rich and affluent countries. And the US economy, with the size and scope, allowed that to happen. I don't think that'll happen. The US will become more inwardly looking, more tariff prone. Global trade as a percentage of GDP will probably start falling. So I think the world has changed. And I think the implications of this new world that we're about to enter will not be known until we kind of think and process about that. Because you must remember that the US existed with a checks and balances system. Now with complete control in Washington, and Trump having scored the largest and most significant comeback in political history, he'll be an unchanged power. I often talk about the last emperor of China. Well, he's the first emperor of America. I don't think America as a republic has had anyone who would be considered royalty. But I think Trump, after his victory, would be considered unchecked royalty, and he would be tweeting and he would be making policy statements, pretty much on whims and fancies rather than rules and order-based system that, in fact, the US had pioneered for the last 30 years. So I feel there will be significant changes. We might not feel them for the first couple of months, but over the next 2-3 years, we'll see very significant changes, and we have to put a head together and decide who are the winners and who are the losers in the new world that will be emerging from Washington.
And will there be clarity on how those decisions are made? But one important point, and Ambassador, I'll come to you on this, the expectations, and I want to ask you how reasonable those are, is that Trump comes in and stops global conflict, which is on right now. That he makes sure that Russia behaves itself. He makes sure that Netanyahu steps back and everything eases. Does he have the leverage to do that?
No, I don't think so, really, because he might be able to stop the funding as far as the Ukraine effort is concerned. Providing more money, providing more arms, ammunition, equipment, etc., to Ukraine to continue its war effort. But to call, as he has said, that I'm going to end the war within a day after I come in, I think that sounds most unreasonable. When you have an election process going on, then of course candidates can make all these sorts of announcements, but getting them through is going to be very difficult. As far as West Asia is concerned, we know that Trump is much more supportive of Netanyahu than Biden or Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris didn't even attend the address of Benjamin Netanyahu to the joint session of the U.S. Congress when he was there, because she was out campaigning. So he is going to be, of course, there are reports that he has told Netanyahu that he should, do away with this mess, as he puts it, before he takes over office. This was before the elections had taken place. But he is much more supportive of Netanyahu. He is also much more, against the nuclear program of Iran. You would have seen that in 2018, when he came to office, he immediately got out of the JCPOA, of the Iranian nuclear deal. And then he imposed all these sanctions. When Biden came to power, his stand was that I'm going to revive the JCPOA. That did not happen for whatever reasons, but I think as far as he will not be in favor of expanding the conflict, but definitely he could use his agency with Saudi Arabia also, UAE also, to put some sort of pressure on Iran. And in fact, he told Netanyahu that you should go when Israel was to bomb,
Sir,
was to attack Iran.
Ambassador Sajjanar, sorry, can I just quick interruption here? In at least 2 or 3 of his speeches before, he'd spoken about this, right? That in his time there has been no conflict. If anything, he might want to prove a point by ensuring that one of the conflicts, if not both, are stopped. You don't think he would pull all ends to try and do that?
He would, but he would definitely try to do that. But how realistic is it? That is, that is my question.
Okay.
And the bigger geostrategic interests are to ensure that Iran is not able to develop the nuclear weapon. So I think he'll be
Okay.
guided by that also in a very strong way.
Okay. Mr. Damani, just a word on that. I mean, from a thematic, sectoral perspective, just trying to understand, we're trying to make out what it means for an investor sitting out of India as well and what it means for India. There is bonhomie, we know. There will be tariffs, and we know. Could India be the better of the recipients? Because the last time around that the China plus one theme was trying to play out, whether in defense or otherwise, India did not make the most of it. Could this time be different?
Well, I think the ambassador will probably be able to better answer this question. For many years in the 50s, 60s, 70s, India was a non-aligned movement leader, did not support the US. And despite that, cultural, economic ties between India and the US grew. But I think now Trump will make us walk the talk. If we don't support a US foreign policy initiative or industrial initiative, he'll threaten to cut off aid, economic flow, whatever, to India. So I think that might become a point of contention between these two greatest democracies. But the other thing that I'm worried about, which maybe the ambassador can also answer, is what happens if Trump decides to pull out of NATO? What happens if, for example, China invades Taiwan and he says, I'm not responsible for Taiwan? Would that add a lot of geopolitical uncertainty and a meltdown in markets? What would the ambassador say?
That, Ambassador Sajjanar?
Yeah, so the last 2 questions. One is if Trump were to pull out of NATO, I think the real impact of that would basically be as far as Europe is concerned, as far as the transatlantic partnership is concerned, and as far as relations between Russia and Europe are concerned. So I don't think we in India as such are going to be involved in a major way as far as that is concerned, but I don't My gut feeling is that, NATO came in just after the Second World War, 1949. I don't think it'll see its demise in this manner. Trump is going to pressurize all these countries that they invest 2% of their GDP as far as their defense preparedness is concerned. As far as Taiwan is concerned, that has no connection in that sense with NATO. But I take the point that, if he were to send mixed signals to China, what would that be? I think this is a part of his overall strategy in terms of pushing back against China. It's not only sort of, in the South China Sea, but otherwise, the hegemonic rise, the expansionist policies of China, Trump wants to push against. And so I don't think he's going to send out any such message, which will, because that will be double messaging, that I'm going strong on Quad and the Indo-Pacific, but I'm sort of, pulling back as far as Taiwan is concerned.
One point, Mr. Damani, I want to understand what happens now to the Fed's interest rate cut program. And what do you think happens to Mr. Powell? Is this his last policy meet this week?
I think in all probability it will be. I think Trump has mentioned publicly that he's in favor of a weaker dollar. He thinks the dollar is too strong, and he's favor of always cheaper interest rates, because that's obviously good for business. So while Powell might accommodate him this time, I think he will want his own man at the Federal Reserve.
Powell goes. My question also from the point of view, Trump increases tariffs, likely inflationary. Then this whole rate cut program that the markets have penciled in at 25 basis points now, 25 basis points next time, and then carrying on till 2026. Does that now see a break?
Well, the minute you get into the budget, which will happen in January or February, the State of the Union budget that the US president gives, and you will start reckoning with the US deficit, and you're going to do tax cuts on top of that to increase the deficit. For example, you have said publicly that you will not charge restaurant tips, or Social Security will be exempt from taxes. Where does that money come from? I think the bond vigilantes will have to answer that. I think he'll be able to push it through Congress because he's almost unchecked at this point. But what happens down the road, we'll have to see.
The point of China, Ambassador, the expectation is that Trump will come down tough on China. China in its own process of putting out its plan to revive its economy. Many are wondering whether China was waiting to see who comes in as president and then decide. So Trump tough on China, what does that mean for trade globally and for India?
Yeah, I think China has really been looking very closely at what is happening in the US, who is going to come, and they have been trying to devise strategies in terms of, whoever might come. So it is quite possible because, these threats that he has made, that will have a debilitating impact on the Chinese market. So there would be possibility of, again, another stimulus that China might come up with, so that, it gives reassurance to its own business industry as well as the foreign investors as far as the Chinese economy is concerned. As far as India is concerned, I think, we have a very small, minimal trade surplus as far as the US is concerned. I think both goods and services, it's in the range of about 20 odd $billion. I was looking at a few days ago, we are about the 12th or 13th in terms of, the amount of trade surplus that we have. We have so many other countries. China is right on the top, Vietnam, Mexico, so many other countries who have more trade surplus. So I think we'll really have to work it out with the United States. Last time we were able to do it, if you remember, we imported more LNG, we imported more aircrafts, etc., etc. I think that is something that we can work with Trump in terms of, the tariffs he had imposed earlier also. I hope he doesn't impose further additional tariffs on Indian exports, but I'm sure we will be able to work with him and with his team. I think the personal rapport should help between the two leaders.
Yeah, and maybe we'll see Teslas in Indian streets soon. You never know. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Ambassador Sajanhar, Ramesh Damani.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming in and speaking with us. We've really enjoyed this conversation, and we hope it's given our viewers an insight of what you can expect. Frankly, with Donald Trump in the White House, expect the unexpected over the next 4 years. It's going to be interesting to track, to say the least. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And with that, it's a wrap on this piece, and I literally hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed doing it. Thanks so much for tuning in.